Oh, hello, waiter. Thank you. I'd like the gecko followed by the owl, please.
TGI Monday. Today we're going to be talking about rules and guidelines from the Bible. And I thought we'd kick off with what are some of the funnier or sillier ones that are in the Bible, which we may often not have mentioned or talked about before?
Well, it's not in the Bible, but it makes me think of the guy who walks into the library and he goes, large cotton chips, please. And the librarian goes, shh, this is a library. And he goes, oh, sorry, large cotton chip, please.
What?
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
We're off to a roaring start.
Terrible.
My favourite biblical injunction is not to eat geckos.
No geckos.
No geckos. Absolutely get that gecko off the table. No geckos whatsoever.
Oh, that's lunch spoiled.
That's ruined it, hasn't it?
Yeah,
I was going to go to the gecko and chip shop.
Yeah, any more for you?
I like the rule that you can't kill a burglar during the day.
You can't kill a burglar.
So, like, you're fine at night, like, go for it.
Yeah. Well, I like the fact that there's a bit of grey area on that one.
What about Twilight? You can have
I thought you meant the saga.
Yeah. So here I was like, oh, vampires adding into this equation.
Yeah. You're not allowed to eat owls either. That's a particular one.
That's quite wise.
Isn't there something? Simon. Isn't there one if your slave leaves then you have to pierce their ears or something?
Yeah, you have to.
Could you give him an ear piercing?
There is one of those. My particular favourite from Deuteronomy 25, verses 11 and 12. When fighting another man, chop off his wife's hand if she grabs your genitals.
Not unreasonable.
Well, on that note, I'm going to ask the question which was much more sensibly put, because actually it does get to the heart of how we read the Bible, and actually that's the stuff that Christians divide about. So I think we will try and get to some of the serious questions on this stuff, but there's so much in there that we could fill an episode with that. Hannah asked on Facebook, thanks for your question, Hannah, how do you work out what rules or guidelines still apply to us today from the Bible? Because it seems like we pick and choose a bit. Do we pick and choose a bit, Damien?
I think it's horrendously complicated in all sorts of ways.
So just in 30 seconds, nice and pithy then, please.
we look at everything that came before Jesus through the prism of Jesus' presence and his words and his new commandment to love.
Okay.
And that's the beginning of the discernment exercise.
So we look at everything through Jesus. Is that a cop-out, do you think, Paul, for us to go, nah, we don't need to look at any of that? So not coveting your neighbour's goods or any of that stuff that's in the Ten Commandments. Do we need to worry about that stuff?
Well, I'm reminded of, I don't know who the quote is by, forgive me, the difference between Catholics and Protestants. The problem with every Catholic is that they read the Pope's Bible. The problem with every Protestant is they read their own Bible.
Amen.
So the subject, the person reading will find quite often what they're looking for rather than keeping an open mind.
Mm-hmm. And we can definitely look in there for specific things. So if we wanted to support a case to stop eating geckos and we wanted to start a campaign and we say, well, it's in the Bible, so it must be true. And there are plenty of issues like that so that people do argue about now.
Well,
so
for a long
sexuality,
time.
women.
Yeah, in this country, slavery was supported by lots of Christians using the Bible as accepted, legitimate source for keeping slaves.
Paul wrote about slaves without turning a hair.
Exactly. So brings me to the other thing, scripture, reason and tradition. We've talked about these things before.
Sure.
And as we as a society learn through scripture and through our traditions, our reasoning changes.
So how would you answer Hannah then, Tamar? What guidelines or rules?
I think Damien kind of got it when he was saying that you have to look at it through love. Like Jesus came to fulfill the law, and his commandment was to love. And then I think that you can look back at all these. Well, I think that I would say that you can look back at all the things in the Old Testament and all these weird rules and stuff, and all the sensible rules as well. And if you look at that and then think, is the heart of this love in the society that I live in now, then
Yeah, well, and the thing is, though, it gets more complicated when we start talking about the New Testament texts. So Paul also said women should be silent in church. There was stuff about head covering, and I know that there are plenty of our viewers who will hold a traditional view on sexuality and on women not speaking in church and not preaching in church. It's actually not something that we've got rid of. You know, it is still a real issue. So how do we deal with that without it being picking and choosing, do you think?
I think we need to place more emphasis on the role of prayerful discernment.
Right.
I think we are very prone to take a rather mechanistic view of decision making, and the importance of laying these things before the Lord in prayer.
And this is what happens, and we still have very different views
Yes, we do.
concluded, and that's part of our story.
That's part
is
of
it
the,
okay
that's
that
part
we
of the
disagree?
divine mystery. Yes, it is okay to disagree. I think all of us around this table will come from very different places, in background, tradition, all that sort of thing. That's absolutely fine. I've always thought that the fun was in the debate.
It can be, and sometimes people are afraid to have the debate, though, aren't they, Paul?
Oh, no, they're not.
We're still in panto season, I think, aren't we?
I'm with Tamar. Through love, through God, God is love. So to disagree lovingly, that's the challenge. And a friend of mine, Laura, who came to one of our episodes to watch it being filmed, she was saying about starting from a kind of Quaker position of loving silence, not from, I've got the answers, I'm going to change your mind, rather than approaching the thing saying, actually, I've been wrong in the past, I could be wrong now, what can I learn from this other person? Even if they're being unloving towards me, I'm going to be loving
Being
towards
willing
them.
to be wrong. And I think that's really important. And there's a danger, though, with silence that we are complicitly silent.
Okay.
So again, even that is complex.
I think one of the sorry, forgive me. One of the acid tests of disagreeing lovingly is whether at the end of the discussion, the time when people have been at odds, whether in fact their relationship has deepened rather than become fractured. And I think that's the sign of healthy disagreement.
Because you and I are both part of General Synod, and there is, which is talking a lot about sexuality at the moment.
Yes.
And we're going to be looking this time about women as bishops.
Yes.
And those are issues that divide lots of us. And I think you're right. So there's a mood where people are willing to dialogue and engage and be on different places on that and be willing to do that and become more friends. And then there's the people who are more afraid to do that. So
we're getting better at it. This is a work in progress.
I agree, because it's painful stuff,
It's
isn't
hard,
it,
and
actually?
it cuts to the very heart of what we believe and cherish and hold to be true about the church.
And which bits are most important and which bits are free to disagree on.
Yes,
Which
that's
bits
right.
are most important for you, Simon? That we're
I
not
think
free to disagree on.
Oh, good questions.
Knowing Simon, it's blessed are the cheese makers.
Oh,
Some
yeah.
pun like that.
Yeah.
Please, let's keep the party polite.
I think I appreciate the way Hannah's phrased the question. Guidelines, rules. In part of her question, in her message to us, she put about was some of the stuff just contextual, and so. And I do think context is really, really relevant. And I think just as we dismiss what Paul says now about women needing to wear head coverings and be silent, there is some stuff, or most of us would say that the context for that isn't appropriate. I do think it's relevant to look at that. I think, Hannah, we're not going to be able to give you a list of that stuff because that would kind of alter the nature of church. But we're really glad that you've asked the question. I think it's really important that we are open to scripture, reason and tradition, and being really honest about the fact that we're likely to be a little bit wrong, but that most of all we should love one another and love God as Jesus taught us.
I don't even know what a gecko is.
It's a little lizard, isn't it?
It's a lizard. I think it is a lizard.
A tiny little one.
I mean, it's really good of God to provide that we should not eat of the gecko, because nobody in their right mind would ever want to. So, but just to be clear.
You can't kill a burglar during the day.
I'm happy to disagree lovingly with you.
I can feel a tantrum coming on.
No.
Thanks for
watching. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share in all the usual places, and leave us a question in the comments down below.
Leviticus knows nothing about pieces to camera.
How true.
Thou shalt not make a graven image.
Oh, bring it on.
I'm not scratching this one.
What does that mean?
Well,
no,
that's a
don't.
question in itself.